Coming up on The World Today, Russia's President Vladimir Putin orders the military to take extremely tough action against any threat to its forces in Syria. The FBI searches a lake in San Bernardino as investigations continue into the mass shooting that killed 14 people at a county office center. Festive decorations made of recycled and environmentally friendly materials adorn the streets of the Bolivian capital La Paz as Christmas draws nearer. And welcome to The World Today. I'm Temi Tokwe Fagbemi. Russian President Vladimir Putin will not tolerate any threat to its country's security forces in Syria, as he has ordered the military to take extremely tough action against any external aggression. During a visit to the defense headquarters, he told officials that such targets must be immediately destroyed. Mr. Putin did not elaborate on specific threats, but Turkey and Russia are currently at odds over the downing of a Russian jet by Ankara. Turkey claimed the bomber had entered its airspace, but Moscow says the plane did not cross the border and that it gave advance notice of the flight path to the United States. A Russian pilot was killed in the downing of the Su-24 bomber. A Marine sent on a rescue mission was also killed. Meanwhile, Syrian opposition politicians and rebels meeting in the Saudi Arabian capital Riyadh have agreed on a framework to guide peace talks with the government. In a statement, the groups call for a new pluralistic regime that represents all sectors in Syria. It also stresses that President Bashar al-Assad and his aides cannot play any part in the transitional period. However, there are conflicting reports as to whether the powerful rebel group Ara al-Sham signed the statement. It had earlier complained that figures it regarded as too close to the government were being given too prominent a role, and it pulled out. Still talking Syria, Canada has welcomed the first batch of Syrian refugees coming into the country. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who received the 163 immigrants, says his country is, quote, showing the world how to open our hearts. The newly elected Liberal government has pledged to take in 25,000 refugees by the end of February. Canada's stance on the issue differs sharply to that of the United States, which has been reluctant to take in migrants. Another plane is due to arrive in Montreal on Saturday.
This is a wonderful night where we get to show not just a plane load of new Canadians what Canada's all about, but we get to show the world how to open our hearts and welcome in people who are fleeing extraordinarily difficult situations. But it's not just about receiving them tonight. It's about the hard work we're all going to do in the coming weeks, months, and indeed years to ensure that everyone who passes through here tonight and in the weeks and months to come are able to build a life for themselves, for their family, and also contribute fully to the continued growth of this extraordinary country. Tonight they step off the plane as refugees, but they walk out of this terminal as permanent residents of Canada with social insurance numbers, with health cards, and with an opportunity to become full Canadians. And this is something that we are able to do in this country because we define a Canadian not by a skin color or a language or a religion or a background, but by a shared set of values, aspirations, hopes, and dreams that not just Canadians, but people around the world share. And how you will receive these people tonight will be something they will remember for the rest of their lives, but also, I know, something that you will remember for the rest of your lives. And I thank you deeply for being a part of this, because this matters. Tonight matters, not just for Canada, but for the world. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Thank you.
Meanwhile, the U.S. military says the finance chief of the Islamic State militant group has been killed in airstrikes by the U.S.-led coalition. Officials say Muwafaq Mustafa Muhammad al-Kamoush, aka Abu Stala, and 2 other senior leaders were killed in the strikes, which took place in recent weeks. No further details were, however, given. The coalition has been carrying out airstrikes against ISIS militants in Iraq and Syria for over a year. Recently, airstrikes also killed an ISIS leader in Libya.
Iraq, we recently conducted strikes against 3 leaders in ISIL's financial and leadership network. Their removal will degrade ISIL's ability to command and control troops, and it disrupts their ability to finance their efforts. The reason they're operating more like a conventional army is because they have more conventional goals, right? I mean, their stated goal is to create a state, to create a caliphate, if you will. That's the word they use.
The VOA's Pentagon correspondent, Carla Babb, joins us live on the program to further discuss this issue. You're welcome to the program, Carla.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what more can you tell us about the senior ISIS officials that were killed in U.S.-led coalition airstrikes?
Well, you've mentioned them by name. Abu Salah was one of their financial ministers. Abu Mariam was considered an Islamic State enforcer, if you will. He was a major leader with extortion, pulling money from the Syrian people, pulling money from the Iraqi people. And then you have Abu Rayman al-Tunisi. He was a coordinator of transferring information, transferring money, of course, people and weapons, taking the money that they would get illegally and basically spreading it out throughout the group.
Now, Carla, I've also read reports that the United States says a significant part of the money that ISIS had earned from oil sales came from trade with the Assad regime and Turkey. How true is that?
Well, a U.S. Treasury official announced that yesterday, that indeed, yes, the Assad regime is taking the, quote, vast majority of the Islamic State oil, and that they've also found some oil in allied areas, in Turkey and in some Kurdish-controlled areas.
Now, Carla, explain this for me. Does it mean that the Assad government is collaborating with ISIS and that Russia was right when it accused Turkey of buying oil from the Islamic State?
Well, there's a couple of nuances to take into account. The Assad regime, let's be clear, the United States and the Assad regime are very different, but they do both have the same enemy. The Assad regime is not in any way collaborating. Just because they're in a pinch, right now they're dealing with a lot of different issues. It's probably out of desperation, but I don't think that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad ever intended to help the Islamic State with the purchase of any oil, and with a Russian ally who is also against the Islamic State, I don't think that would be anything that he'd be looking forward to doing, to collaborating with. On Turkey's side, Russia has been saying this for weeks. President Erdogan, Turkish President Erdogan, said no, the Turkish government is not taking any money from the Islamic State, but it's kind of tough because the Islamic State is making the majority of their profits, which is between $1 and $1.5 million a day, at the wellhead, at that initial sale. So you could sell it to a legitimate oil person who could in turn try to make profits themselves with the cheaper oil, and the Turkish government or the Kurdish government might not necessarily know. There is room for something slipping in without the Turkish government being aware. That said, they need to be more vigilant.
Well, finally, Carla, how far has the coalition gone in targeting ISIS oil revenue in Syria and Iraq?
This has been very important for the United States and the coalition from the beginning. They've started targeting these oil refineries. Initially, they wanted to damage areas that it would take a couple weeks to repair. They didn't want to permanently damage this stuff because this oil is the Syrian people's, this oil is the Iraqi people's, not the Islamic State's. And at one point, the United States wanted the citizens of these countries to be able to run these oil refineries again. Unfortunately, the war has dragged on. So the United States had to take a more serious approach, making more serious damage to some of this wellheads, and they started this operation a few weeks ago called Operation Tidal Wave 2. That's a reference to Operation Tidal Wave from World War II, where the United States targeted Axis Power, Germany's oil refineries, to try to hurt them. They have targeted hundreds upon hundreds of oil trucks. They've targeted wellheads, and they're focusing in the Deir ez-Zor region. That is responsible for approximately 2/3 of all the oil that the Islamic State has. And in order to do this, they realized that some of the drivers of these trucks are just regular Syrian citizens. They're not part of the Islamic State. So the United States and the coalition dropped leaflets warning these drivers, get out of your trucks, it's not worth your life, we are coming after these trucks. So after the United States felt that it had done its due diligence to protect civilians, it started these strikes, and they've been very successful.
Well, the viewers, Kalabab, thank you so much for joining us on The Wall today.
Thank you.
Still to come on the program, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is searching a lake in San Bernardino as investigations continue into the mass shooting that killed 14 people at a county office center. Please stay with us.